a survey in 2020 because of the COVID pandemic. And so we wanted to get, back on the horse and get out there and do a study on public perceptions of what's going on in Orleans. And so what we found in this study, 500 registered voters, both in Orleans and 500 in Jefferson Parish, is that particularly for Orleans, the crime problem is having a profound effect on the quality of life in Orleans, that residents in the city are dissatisfied with life in New Orleans, and they say that it has become a worse place to live over the last 5 years. And over the past 4 years, what we're witnessing in the study is that in both parishes, residents are increasingly concerned with crime and safety. And in Orleans, all right, residents lack confidence that the police can protect them. So it's not just a matter of crime being out there and being fearful of crime, there's also the sense that nothing's being done to address it. If we look at the offices of the criminal justice system here in Orleans, the police superintendent, the district attorney, the parish sheriff, right, the criminal courts, all of these offices have net negative approval ratings. We asked about the job approval for the mayor. Her disapproval rating is twice the size of her approval rating. Only 31% of residents in Orleans give her positive marks for her performance in office, whereas 62% are unhappy with the job she is doing as mayor. 35% strongly disapprove of the job that she is doing. We asked about government services. We asked registered voters to rate them from very good to very poor. And what we found is that there are many more specific areas of dissatisfaction with services in New Orleans than in Jefferson. That we witnessed double-digit increases in negative ratings on a number of areas of government services. Jefferson residents are much more optimistic about opportunities for employment in the parish, and they're much more positive than our Orleans residents about new jobs and industry coming into the parish. We asked a question about global climate change because we are no strangers to hurricanes, and there's an argument being made that there's this increased intensity and severity of hurricanes. And so we asked residents of both parishes whether they thought the recent increase in severity was due to global climate change, or was it just weather events that happen from time to time. And what we found is most people in both parishes do believe that global climate change is responsible for the increased severity of hurricanes, but we also found partisan differences in opinion on that question. And then finally, the quality of life in Jefferson has declined slightly, but Parish President Cynthia Lee Shang and Parish Sheriff Joe Lopinto enjoy extremely high approval ratings. They're up there in the 75%, 80% range. So that kind of summarizes what we found. I'll take any questions that you might have.
When was this survey taken?
This survey was done, let me make sure I double check here. Of course. Oh, it's in this one. I want to say September 10th through the 28th, but let me double check. Yes. Yes, I was there for every session, so I remember every date. September 10th through September 28th.
What do you make of the dissatisfaction with Mayor Latoya Cantrell?
I mean, everything comes down to the issue of crime. This is the issue that's really weighing down the city. And we haven't seen numbers like this since the 1990s, when the city was experiencing, 400 murders a year. So, this, when you read the whole report, you'll just see how crime is just basically influencing attitudes on everything.
Dr. Chevernak, a couple questions I had. You say the sample size is 500. Was that 500 surveys that went out, or 500 respondents in both parishes?
500 respondents in both parishes.
A total of 1,000.
Total of 1,000 surveys, yes.
Got it. And outside of crime, while crime is a big deal and certainly influencing a lot of what you certainly covered here, as it relates to other city services in New Orleans, sanitation, things like that, what's the satisfaction on that?
The worst service was the condition of streets. 9 out of 10 people basically rated them as poor, very poor. Also control of abandoned housing, drainage, flood control. Trash pickup went from a positive rating of 67% to a positive rating of 12%. So that dropped off significantly. So that was the biggest decrease that we saw, or the biggest increase in negative evaluations was with trash pickup.
So you said it went from 12% dissatisfied to 67% dissatisfied?
It went from, yes, 12% dissatisfied, poor, very poor, to 67%. So over a 5-fold increase in negative evaluations of trash pickup.
Were other city services surveyed in New Orleans and Jefferson? On maybe one of the hot deals this week, there's a survey or a report from the OIG talking about permits in the Office of Permits. Are there opinions that were shared about services outside of sanitation trash?
The services we looked at were drainage and flood control, services for the homeless, control of abandoned housing, quality of housing, access to health services, recreation programs, quality of police protection, trash pickup, control of litter, control of graffiti, the conditions of the streets, public transportation, and traffic congestion.
Can you expound on the homeless?
What we asked is whether, we asked people to rate either positively or negatively the services for the homeless in Orleans and in Jefferson. And that was the worst rated service in Jefferson.
Homeless.
Yes, services for the homeless.
And can you maybe expand a little bit on the difference between people's perception of the quality of life in Jefferson Parish versus Orleans, and what are some of the factors weighing on that?
Well, people are typically much more satisfied with what's going on in Jefferson Parish, that it's a middle-class suburban parish compared to a urban, low-income parish. And so it's a question of whether the resources they're providing are allowing this parish to offer quality services, or there's really no need for those services because people are much better off in Jefferson than they are here. And even though there's been a slight decline, they still are very happy with their public officials. 75% approval rating for Cynthia Lee Shinks, 79% approval rating for Joe Lapinto. Even the parish council, 67% job approval rating.
Was there any type of breakdown in the crime in the survey as far as types of crime or maybe where it's happening?
No, we just, that question is basically a free response. We asked people, what's the biggest problem in the parish? And 56% overwhelmingly said crime. So they mentioned crime or, guns and murders and things like that, or, carjackings. So sometimes the people are offering specifics, but we just code that as crime.
Hey, Ed, on your pie chart for Jefferson Parish, you have insurance as being one of the
Yes,
issues. I don't see it in the Orleans pie chart.
because it wasn't mentioned.
Wasn't mentioned?
Wasn't-
Insurance
yeah.
was not mentioned.
It was not mentioned. One of the unique things on the biggest problem for Orleans was that there was a cluster of issues there that revolved around the city's politics, about corruption, about lack of leadership, about politics in general, and about the mayor specifically. And so it basically was more, the concerns about the political system, the cynicism about the political system tended to outweigh more traditional issues such as the economy and education. And also what was unique with Jefferson Parish in terms of telling us what the biggest problem was that 5% of Jefferson residents said New Orleans is Jefferson Parish's biggest problem. That in previous surveys, we've always had several people mention New Orleans, but it's reached a critical mass of 5% that say, the people who are moving in from New Orleans or crime from New Orleans or, Orleans Parish. So they're viewing it as more of a problem than ever.
What was the biggest difference? I think hear you say that residents of New Orleans see this city as a worse place to live in the past 5 years. Can you expand on that a little bit?
Well, what we ask is, has the city become better or worse or stayed the same in the last 5 years? And so we're asking them to do a retrospective evaluation of life in the city. And what they overwhelmingly told us is that things have gotten worse.
By what percent?
I want to say 62% said it has gotten worse. I'm almost. Yes. All right, 62% of respondents in New Orleans say that things have gotten worse. That number was 24% in 2018.
Ed, any good news for Orleans Parish?
Fire protection was the best rated service, and public transportation was also rated near the top.
And to be fair, this survey, you say random, but obviously people that live in different parts of the city, in different parts of Jefferson, will have different opinions about the city. Where in the city, or how was that dispersed in terms of who answered the survey?
All right, well,
Does that make sense
we
what
could,
I'm
yeah,
asking?
we looked at attitudes towards public officials by council district. All right, so that gives us an indication of certain areas may be more approving of the mayor, all right. Certainly, if you look at District E, folks there are twice as approving of the mayor of, say, the folks in District A. So, yeah, we did look at those geographic distinctions.
You can't put lipstick on a pig, you know, quite frankly, and if it's a bad situation across the town, I get it. I do think it's a fair question, however, to ask where in fact the respondents came from.
No, they came from all over.
Great.
No, we make sure that our sample is representative of the larger population. So we know, we break down the voter file, and we know how many people live in District A through District E, and that matches up in our sample.
With 62% of the people surveyed in New Orleans unhappy with the mayor, what is how do you handicap the recall effort, or is that something different altogether?
I think it might be something different. I'm sure the recall people are going to use the survey as more ammunition to convince people to get out there and, sign those petitions. And it's basically the same population. They're looking for registered voters. That's who we talk to. We talk to registered voters. So there may be some overlap, but I don't see us, all of a sudden, the flock of people is deciding to sign the petition just because they see these numbers.
Is that an indicator, though, or is it one thing to say that you're dissatisfied with the mayor, and it's another thing to sign a petition?
There are two different things. I mean, I've talked to people who have told me that they are dissatisfied with the mayor, but they're not going to sign the petition because they just feel, let her just run her time out, right? She's term limited. We'll continue to muddle through like we always have.
Do you have any idea how this compares to other metropolitan areas? Is it?
I do not. And I know that there are other quality of life studies out there, but they ask different questions. And so it's hard to compare apples and oranges like that.
And I do have one final question.
Sure.
What I don't see on either of these is anything regarding the pandemic, and considering how big of a life change issue, like our Katrina of the last 5 years or whatever. Was there a question, or were respondents asked anything regarding that and how that has affected?
No, when it came to the biggest problem, that was just an open-ended response, a verbatim response. So if people did have concerns about the pandemic, they didn't tell us about it.
Thank
That's
you
it?
very much. Yes, indeed.
I wish I had better news.
Fire department.
It's kind of respectful.
We'll be sending out an electronic
Sure.
version momentarily.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much.